So let's go see. So some revision on hardware. Hardware, there's 5 different like groups of hardware we get. Our first one is our input devices, such as our biometric input devices, card readers, scanners, keyboard, mouse, and all that. Then the textbook is talking about input-output devices, so that's a combination, like our touch screens, which is an input and an output device. Next one is our output devices, which is like our monitors, printers, etc. Then we've got our storage devices, our hard drives, flash drives, memory cards, and so forth. And our last one is our processing devices. So that would be our CPU, GPU, and so forth. That's sort of revision of grade 10 components or subcategories of hardware. Then for this year, we're looking at mobile technologies a bit more. So we can read through that, but mobile technologies basically refers to our smartphones. So they are much smaller, easier to carry, but that means they've got less processing power. So standard computers has got more processing power, more RAM, and so forth. But our mobile devices make it easier for us to move around. Then other things that come out a bit more is this augmented reality, where applications try to have a combination between reality and making it look a bit different. Okay, so advantages we've got of mobility, the size and weight. So our mobile devices nowadays, they're much smaller and they're much lighter. So it's easier for us to carry around and to work with. Constraints, however, that we do have is our battery life. That is a problem. The smaller and lighter we go, that means the smaller the battery. That means we have to look at how can we conserve battery life to make these devices last longer. So computing power versus power consumption. The better your phone's computer power basically means that your phone will actually use more battery life. So the phones and manufacturers have to look at, are they going to have a bigger and better CPU, GPU, etc. With a small phone, that means it won't last long, or the phone going to make the phone a bit bigger so they can have a bigger battery and then they can actually have these stronger things in, or they have to look at a combination between them so that the battery power is still optimal, but you still have the optimal processing power you need to do what the device is made to do. Alright, then other things you'll see, there's also the like Galaxy Note 7 had heating problems. So our batteries also, they get hot if you work harder on them, or if you use very power intensive programs, the batteries actually become much hotter, so that will actually in turn could have a detrimental effect on the battery life and on the life of the device itself. Then we carry on. Okay, factors influencing the performance of a computer. So the main thing is for our CPU is the speed of the CPU. So it's the speed that each core can do the processing in, and then the ability of the CPU to run multiple processors. So that's our multi-core processors, like a quad-core or dual-core processors, where we've got multiple CPU cores in one, and then this one refers to the speed of each of those cores. Alright, and these things also have got an effect on our GPUs. Our GPUs also these days can run multiple processes. So the two main factors that affect GPUs is the GPU's clock speed and the type of the GPU. Alright, another thing that affects our device's processing power is the memory capacity. So RAM. If our RAM is too small, that means we need more virtual memory, and that will actually make the whole system run slower. So we need enough RAM so that we do not get errors in that we don't have enough RAM to open up programs that we want to run. Then we've got our CPU cache. This is another form of caching. So it's where there's cache memory that's loaded between basically the RAM and the CPU to also help speed up the whole process. But there are three important forms of caching. So the first one is CPU cache. This is due to the growing difference in speed between the computer CPU and RAM. Many CPUs have this small high-speed cache built into it. So that's our cache memory. Next one is our disk caching. To make a disk, our hard drive faster, we have to get some RAM. So what nowadays a lot of hard drives come out with a little bit of RAM built in to allow our hard drives to be faster. And then the last one is web caching to make a website faster. That means we need some hard drive space. So the web cache is a small area on the computer's hard drive where images and pages of the World Wide Web are stored. So that the next time you visit those same sites, you can actually open them faster because it doesn't need to download those images again. Another thing affecting our device's processing power is the storage itself and the speed of that storage. So nowadays we get our solid state drives. They are much faster than our old hard drives, which is our mechanical hard drives. So nowadays if you can have bigger solid state drives, it will actually speed up your system quite a bit as well. Our disk caching we spoke about, where some of our hard drives come up with a little bit of RAM built into it, and that will also speed up the system quite considerably. Then another thing that could affect our system as a whole is our network interface card. Nowadays a lot of our programs are loaded on the internet with our cloud computing. So if our network interface card is slow and cannot work at a faster speed, then it will actually slow down all of our apps. So you can see loading of web pages, downloading of applications, all of those things could be much slower due to our NIC. So these aspects, all of them has got an influence on the speed of our system. And then our last part, motivate the typical computer system in respect of user requirements. So you should not always look at just get the best, most expensive PC. It depends on what the person wants to use it for. So we've got the 4 different people. First one is our home user. Somebody that just want to go to Facebook, browse the internet a bit and type small documents and emails. Or you get your small office user that actually use it in like a doctor's firm where it's just a small office where limited people work on the computer to do their business stuff. Then we've got our gamer that plays online gaming or plays a lot of games, and a power user, somebody that uses the software for a lot of technical things. That could be anything from a web designer to somebody that, like an architect, or somebody that works with large images, maybe a designer, or it could also be somebody that needs to work with video clips and so forth. Those would be our power users. So if we look at our home user, they use it for those things, and they could actually have a much smaller computer, small office, a bit more internet, but otherwise basically the same thing as our home user. The only difference might be for them, for the small office user, mobility could have a big influence. So it could be that they want to travel a bit more or work while they're traveling, so they could maybe want rather a mobile office. Our gamer, we normally get different levels of gamers, and there's a thing they call benchmarking. So when you run a computer, you can run benchmarking software where they actually run through some graphics processing to see how fast your computer can actually process different images and different computations to give you a rating of how fast your computer is and how fast it needs to be for the different games you play. And then our power users also needs a lot of something specific. Video encoding could be, or as I said, architects. They've got computer programmers, web developers, video editors. All those people might need a power intensive computer to be able to do everything they needed to do. So when we're looking at hardware, for the home user, the CPU, you can just get an entry-level CPU, and everything you do could be entry-level. You don't need anything specific. You'll see storage, they included the mid, it's just for images. A lot of home users also want to save lots of pictures and photos they took. So that for storage, you could want maybe a bit bigger. For a small office, exactly the same thing. The gamer, however, and our power user needs high-end of everything. High-end CPU, high-end GPU, more RAM to speed it up, more storage, and a bigger monitor. So you can, depending on who the user is, you can actually sort of advise them as to what they should buy. Yeah, and that's the end of the chapter. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Please remember with hardware also, you need to keep in mind everything you've done in grade 10 and 11 for this. Good luck, people.